In this episode, we talk about more awesome 80s toys I wish I had when I was a kid. So, stick around. Fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to Nostalgia Syndrome. My name is Rob, and welcome to the 13th installment of Toys I Wish I Had When I Was a Kid. This is the show where I reminisce about certain toys that I wish I had when I was a kid, and for whatever reason, I never had them. Usually it was cost, since I grew up a little bit poor, for lack of a better term, and some of it was just, I don't know, parental neglect for fun? Either way, this is just a fun excuse to talk about these awesome toys, and an excuse for me, in a later episode this week, to hunt for these toys on eBay and see if they're obtainable or not. So, without further ado, let's go to number one on the list. Number one on the list actually doesn't come from the 80s at all. It comes from the 70s. And it was within my world for a sliver of a moment while I was growing up. And ever since then, I've always wanted one. It was one of those things that was within my grasp and got snatched away. And I'll explain. See, there was this kid that lived around the block from me. Kind of the block. We're talking about kind of the country. But for lack of better terms, around the block from me. Anyway, he was one of my first friends that I made while in kindergarten. And we remained friends for a few years in elementary school, but, you know, so on and so forth. Anyway, his father was an antiquities dealer. And growing up where we did, Gettysburg was a huge ordeal. So he dealt a lot with, you know, Gettysburg artifacts, you know, bullets and junk like that. Anyway, I guess having a father that's within that world, this dude did not play with any of his toys. So, one day his father got into one of their various sheds on their property, and within this shed was like the Star Wars Sears catalog page come to life. I mean, Millennium Falcon, all the figures, the 12-inch ones. I mean, they weren't in their packages, but they were there. And among that glorious sight was a remote-controlled R2-D2. Growing up, I wanted an R2-D2 to have as a friend. I mean, wouldn't he be an awesome friend growing up? I mean, he's just an awesome droid. Just very cute and cuddly with a metal exterior. I mean, I assume he's cute and cuddly. His beeps sound very nice. But anyway, this was like a dream come true. I could have my own little remote-controlled R2. And believe me, I wasn't asking the dude to give me one. I just wanted to play with it. I wanted to see it. So, he held it. Let me look at it with my eyes. You know that old trick that parents used to pull. Look with your eyes, not your hands. And that was as close as I got to it, because it got whisked back away into this glorious shed of just toy awesomeness. Star Wars toy awesomeness. Now, over the years, I've seen them here and there, and, you know, I can tell you that the remote control for it, you know, kind of looked sort of like a lightsaber. They might have been going for that, maybe, but it was just a stick with this long metal antenna. Not the kind that telescoped, just a wiggly wobbly one that probably would hurt if you whipped somebody with it. Anyway, my path never crossed another one ever again. It was the first time I saw it. But it was one of those things that when I compiled these lists, it popped into my head of, wow, I always wanted one of those. Now, believe me, that longing, we'll use that word, that longing of having one was what helped propel me to go to the Droid Depot at Galaxy's Edge and make my own remote controlled droid to be my friend. I mean, I could have made a carbon copy of R2. They give you all the things to do that, but I wanted to make an R4 unit. I don't know why, I just really dug it, and I wanted to make a friend of my own. Anyway, yeah, I've been harboring this resentment to that dude for I don't know how many decades now, because that's just a real dick move to do. I mean, we're kids. Play with your toys, man. Number 2 on the list is a character that is in a large, awesome toy line, but he's the only one that stands above the rest when it comes to me wanting it. And I've wanted it ever since I was a kid. What we're talking about is the Superpowers collection by Kenner. The figure I'm talking about is Green Arrow. Now, this is one of those instances where it wasn't my parents putting the kibosh on it or just not having the funds for it. It was the simple fact I've never saw one out in the wild growing up. Of course, nowadays I see it everywhere online, but back then I could never find them. Why Green Arrow, you may ask? Well, this may be a little silly, but I had a Green Arrow sticker. I think it was one that originated from the 70s from a promotional giveaway of some sort, and my grandmother had given it to me, and I have it stuck to an old footlocker at my parents' house that I used to collect comics and put them in. Anyway, Green Arrow has always been that standout character to me, and I think it comes from having a childhood infatuation with Robin Hood. From mostly the animated movie, but also people in my family that were hunters were bow hunters, and I just thought that was cool growing up. Anyway, those might be silly reasons to like a specific character, but as time has gone on, I've grown to like the character for who he is and the stories that he was in. I mean, I love the Mike Grail run on Green Arrow, and it's a standout as one of the best at DC at that time. Anyway, like I said, this was something I never saw out in the wild, but I always had that sticker, and I always just looked at it and thought that dude was awesome. I know if I would have seen that figure, there's a good possibility I probably could have gotten it. I mean, I remember seeing the Superpower figures in the store, and I would watch Super Friends on Saturday mornings, and I really liked all the characters, but for some reason the stars never aligned to get any of them. I never got a single Superpowers character, and I mean, honestly, this entry on the list could be for any of them, but I have to pick Green Arrow as the one that I super duper want more than any of the other ones. Still to this day, when I see a Green Arrow figure out and about, I pick it up. I just have to. I mean, he's just that character for me when it comes to DC Comics. Now, number 3 on the list is the Tron tabletop arcade game, released by Tomy in 1982. Now, funny little story about this particular tabletop arcade game is I actually had it in my possession for a long amount of time because I was borrowing it from a family friend, and I played that thing all the time. Granted, looking back at it now, I cannot remember a single detail of the actual games themselves, but I just have this foggy recollection of just being smitten with it. This is an odd entry for the list if you think about it, because I actually had it in my possession even though I didn't own it. And I got to play with it and enjoy some great quality time with it, but I didn't own it. And I think looking back at it now, I wish I had it, that still, so I could play with it. So this doesn't really fit onto the list of toys I wish I still had because I never truly owned it. Anyway, yeah, it was a sad day when I had to give it back. Now, like I said, I have a real foggy recollection of actually what the games were. I think there were multiple games on it. I think there was a little disc throwing game and a light cycle game, but I can't be 100% sure. When I edit this video and I look for pictures and things to throw in here, hopefully I stumble upon a video of someone playing it or something, and that'll jog my memory and probably make me want it even more. But if I can find any of that cool footage, I'll throw it in here. If not, sorry. Now, number 4 on the list is a big one. This is a toy still to this day I want. I can only imagine how expensive it is because of how freaking awesome it is. And that is the Cobra Rattler from G.I. Joe. Released by Hasbro in 1984, the Cobra Rattler is just awesomeness personified. I mean, with its Harrier jump jet-esque, turbines that would go up and down. The fact that it came with Wild Weasel, who is an awesomely designed character, awesome color scheme of red, and you pair all of that with how awesome they were in the cartoon, how awesome they were in the comic book, and just how awesome this toy looked. Now, this is an actual G.I. Joe item that I've never laid hands on. I had another friend, not the one from earlier, that lived down the street who also hoarded toys, but we'll get into that in the future. He actually had the USS Flag and hundreds of Joe figures and vehicles, and he didn't have the Rattler, and he's probably the only one that, allowed me to interact with these figures and vehicles growing up. The ones that, of course, I wasn't able to get due to price or finding them. Because I swear, with my memory of how toys were back then, it was kind of like it would be on the shelf and then gone. Like, I don't remember it being restocked, or it's kind of reminiscent of the collector's market today, where they only get one box, they throw it up, when it's gone, and yeah, you're out of luck if you didn't get one. Now, I'm sure it had kind of a elevated price point for what my parents were willing to pay, and maybe that's why I never got one, because I sure do remember telling my parents how great it was and how much I wanted one. And yeah, these lists in the future will have multiple G.I. Joe vehicles on them, because there were just so many iconic ones that I was never able to get, and we'll talk about them in the future. But for right now, we're talking about the Rattler and just how great it was. And like I said, it's still one that I would love to get today. I just know that it's probably super duper expensive, and I even know that the 25th anniversary version of it goes for hundreds, so I can't even imagine what the OG from '84 goes for. So yeah, I'm looking forward to our toy hunt video to see, just how crazy those prices are. Now, number 5 on the list is probably nightmare fuel for a lot of you out there. But for me, it's just a cute breath of fresh air of something that I had a minor run-in with growing up. And that is the Ronald McDonald doll, released by Hasbro in 1978. Now, growing up in the 80s, and I'm sure even people that had more of a recollection of the 70s, maybe even before that, grew up respecting and loving Ronald McDonald. It's not like today where you're kind of programmed to hate big companies and mascots and all that jazz. But back then, Ronald was, he was just a homie. You loved McDonald's. It was a special treat. And honestly, I never ate there as a kid other than like kids' birthday parties. Just imagine that. And I've talked about that. I have a whole episode about just how awesome McDonald's was in the 80s. But to have birthday parties at a fast food restaurant, nowadays that would be weird, kind of cheap or something. But back then, it was like, you have the best birthday party ever. But I digress. What I mean to talk about, because I've already talked about how awesome McDonald's is, if you want to check out that previous episode. Anyway, enough self-promotion. What made this toy so awesome was, and I'm just a sucker for this kind of stuff, he had a real cloth outfit, real clown shoes, real hair, and he had a little Grimace doll that you could put in his pocket. He had working pockets. How awesome is that? Anyway, the big crowning achievement of this toy was it came with a whistle. Not for you, mind you, for Ronald himself. You would put the whistle in his mouth, and when you would squeeze Ronald, he would blow it. I mean, it's kind of Chucky-like if you think about it. Like, he's a living, breathing doll blowing a whistle. But back then, that was just cool. I mean, that was just a neat little feature. Now, I remember running into this doll at the Goodwill. That was a place that we did a lot of shopping when I was growing up, and a lot of my toys came from that. So I think that's why I have a big recollection of a lot of 70s toys, and I had a bunch because they were what were at the Goodwill. So anyway, I remember seeing him at the Goodwill and playing with him there while my parents and grandparents shopped in there, and for whatever reason, I did not go home with him that day. It's almost the exact same story of the Shogun Godzilla that I still carry with me today. Of having him in my arms, happy as I could be, wanting him so bad, and my mom wouldn't get him for me. It was the Goodwill. I can't imagine it being too expensive. Who knows what her reason was back then? It's not like I can talk to her about it today because she has no recollection of that. But I sure do. I carry that with me. So it's Godzilla and Ronald McDonald together within my fractured psyche. Anyway, this was just a quick list of 5 more toys I wish I had when I was a kid. And like I mentioned, this is the 13th installment of this series, and like I've said in the past, there are no signs of it slowing down. As I go through my normal day bebopping and, being a dad and working my butt off at my job, I get these little glimmers of recollection, of nostalgia, of memories, of toys that just slipped between my fingers, or toys that I never were able to come in physical contact with at all, but they were there. I saw the commercials and I knew that they existed. I just never was able to secure them one way, shape, or form. Yes, I know I grew up a little bit poor, like I've said, so a lot of these things just were not within my parents' grasp to provide for me. And that's cool, because it's those little setbacks, if you will, that made me who I am today. And yeah, for good or bad, the bad being that I'm surrounded by toys today, that's also a good thing. But yeah, I just have a hard time letting go of the past because I didn't have that much of a past to begin with. But it's those things that made me who I am today, like I said. So, good or bad, this is me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you will be notified whenever there's a new episode. Anyway, until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.